comment. We are going to be exploring ways too that we can try to re-engage the community as part of the particular feedback and consultation park planning theme that we're kind of working off of. It does allow for continuing consultation with the public throughout both the planning and design process. And because of the funding for this being released in the fall, we're kind of at a point now where we really need to engage with a design consultant, get them on board on a professional basis. And our plans are to continue to, at least in the initial phases of the design, to re-engage the community, to see what they like and don't like about the design as it moves forward, as well as to get a little bit more input on what people would like to see in terms of potential art or an historic interpretation in the park. So once we get, you know, a solid design in place, we'd go through with permitting. We're looking at construction bidding happening about this time next year, and then construction taking place in the fall of 2021 and winter of 2022. So, and that's about in line too with the 1.5 year requirement from the federal grant to essentially get that money spent. So, and just to note too, I noted that the existing Fisher Street Park will have to be demolished as well. There will not be, the existing park will not close until the new park is completely built and open to the public. So there will not be a loss of use during that time. So with that, I will open it up to any comments.
Great, thanks, Gary. Any questions for Gary? Jennifer.
Thanks, Gary. That was a good overview. Thank you. I had a question about, yeah, that's great. That picture, that slide, the differences between concept 1 and 2, and the big one being the half court versus the full size basketball court. And as you mentioned, there wasn't a lot of public input and participation. And in fact, even as a member of the board, I didn't know about this project until I saw it come up in the general goes to everyone who gets an email about parks projects email a couple months ago, and clicked on it and was like, oh, what is this? So I would really encourage us to get some more input on that. And in my experience, that can be a really big deal for a community, whether or not they can actually play a full game, or if it's just sort of a pickup exercise, shooting hoops situation. That really depends on how the neighborhood would really like to use that. So I would hope we would get a little more input there.
Okay, completely understand. Yes, yes.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions?
I have a question. So I heard the ways that the community was engaged, but what I heard that the community asked for this. So the community asked for the park to be moved. Did I hear that correctly? Understand that correctly?
Now, I will be very honest with you. My involvement with this project only goes back to late last year, but based upon, you know, again, the direct quote that I kind of gave you all at the beginning, that was directly from Housing and Neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So the existing, just maybe a little bit of background somewhat in there, without getting into too many details, is that the existing park site, as you can see from this graphic right here, is kind of squeezed in between essentially 3 existing houses right now. Right. And my understanding, again, just what my understanding from different meeting notes and from other folks is that, you know, it's the park situated the way it is. It's not a very visible location. Mm-hmm. There's also, I guess, obviously the people who live next door are not necessarily happy with people playing basketball really late into the night sometimes, basically. So I think that's a little bit where that came from. I think it sounds to me, again, from the Housing and Neighborhood staff that were involved in this, that this was a, you know, at least a 2-year process involved in talking about this. I even find meeting notes going back to, you know, 2008, even talking about when the discussion was initially coming up about the East College Park development, and there was talk about what can we do about this park. So that's, unfortunately, I wish I could give you more information, but it's kind of where, my knowledge stands. But my understanding, again, is that this was brought before City Council, and in some form or the other, the park relocation was included as part of the overall East College Park development plan, and it required the relocation of the park.
So essentially it's being relocated. So, I mean, housing will fit in that location better. And will it be less disruptive in terms of basketballs and children screaming and whatnot in its new location?
Well, that's a really good point. I mean, where it's going now, it is on a corner lot. There is a house immediately to the lot is immediately to the north of the existing site, but you can see the house itself, which takes up that entire lot, is more further away from the property line. And then there's another house site that has been developed. It's shown in the aerial photograph here. You can kind of see the foundation of it immediately to the west. That house has since been built. So, but again, it also has that backyard separation between the two. So in terms of the new park's impact to adjacent houses, I would say it's much less than it is right now. So.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay. Yeah, Marcia. Bottom left. Should be a little mute button on the bottom left.
Got it. So what kind of barrier or fencing or boundary marking will this have? Have you gotten that far?
We really have not gotten that far yet, but because this is concept plan development. But what has kind of been expressed is that at least the basketball court, since it will be immediately adjacent to the playground, that will probably have to be fenced to keep the balls in, if nothing else, a safety issue. But also just from my designing playgrounds in the past too, this site's got two streets right next to it, and I think that by putting the having to have the playground so close to the streets, there will be a sidewalk at least in between the street and the park site on both street frontages. I would think for safety reasons, we would probably want to explore having some type of fencing around the playground as well to prevent young children in particular from accidentally running out to the streets. So, and I think, careful consideration will need to be thought about what that fence material is, what it looks like. And I would personally want to steer away from putting chain link fence around the playground. So we'd want to explore other fence options, I believe.
Great. It just also seems like that would be provide some reassurance to the adjoining property owners that the park users are not going to spill over into their properties.
Yes, I agree with that. Yes. I want to mention too, one of the things that we're kind of having an internal discussion yesterday amongst other project managers, and the idea I mentioned of incorporating art into the park as well. One of the ideas that kind of came up is if there is a fence around the outer perimeter of the park, there's opportunity to possibly, if there is some art elements, to maybe incorporate art elements onto the fence itself, as well as maybe some ideas of what some historic interpretation panels or such as that as well. So that's actually something that maybe becomes more of an experience of enjoying that art from outside the park, and rather than being internal to the park itself, which could obviously be quite busy with kids and basketball and such going on. Again, that's just one of the ideas that's kind of floating out there. So.
Great. Any other questions? Just as an aside to fill in maybe for Gary or Smidge, I was up to date on the East College Park sort of master planning process. The city came to own a lot of that land over time, and they went through a big master planning process with the Housing and Urban Neighborhoods Department. to figure out what they wanted to do with it. A lot of those lots are currently open, and so they're doing a redevelopment in that area, and this just became part of that process. And I guess what I'm hearing from you, Gary, is that out of that process came that they wanted to move essentially move the park from its current location to this new location. It looks like it's next to their future mail kiosk of this essentially new
It is. It is. And it's kind of the central, if you look at the plan here, it's really, if you were to look at this block here, which is the East College Park development, that's right in the center of the entire development. So,
yeah. So it's neighborhoods is really leading the charge on this because they came to acquire all these properties, 70s, 80s, 90s, through some interesting policies the city used to have.
I would just comment that, just to be clear, that this also is an area of gentrification. So, as we say, redevelopment, the folks that's been living there for years are not the majority that's going to benefit from this new park or this new structure. So, and I heard Gary say something about conversations and stuff has been happening since about 2008. So you think 12 years later, you look at the neighborhood now, it's very different, from what it looked like 12 years ago. So I just wanted to make, just put that comment out there as it relates to the information that, we got years ago from the residents that were there to the information we're getting now from the current residents is I'm sure is vastly different.
That's a good point. I was going to bring the same thing up. I think it's a good point that you made about that, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Thanks, Shaw. Any other questions, comments? You want to say something, Kendall?
No, I'm good.
Great. Any other questions, comments? Great. Thanks for keeping us up to date. Sounds like it's going to be paid for outside of city funds, which is good because we are currently out.
That's correct. This is 100% being paid for by Housing Neighborhoods facilitating that grant. So,
great. All right. Awesome. Thanks for the update.
All right. Thank you all.
Awesome. All right. We have a Greenway Plan update.
Yes,
well.
we've got Chris Nifgar, who's one of our capital project managers, who's going to give a brief update on the Greenway Master Plan.
Thanks, Oscar.
Thank you, Oscar. I will start sharing my screen here. All right, can you all see that? How's that? Okay,
yes.
Awesome.
Good.
Yes, so I am Chris Nickfar with Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources, and I'm the project manager for the Greenway Master Plan update. And I'll ask that you bear with me tonight. There is a lot of information that I have to share. I have a lot of slides to go through, but I'll try to go through them as quickly as possible. But if I'm going through too quickly or you have any questions along the way, feel free to just chime in and interrupt me, and I'll be happy to answer whatever that is. So I'll start by giving a little bit of background and history on the Greenway system. We have a steering committee that's guiding our process, and I'll give you some information on that. Let you know what progress we have made to date, what we're hearing, and what we still have left to do with the project. So this is a little bit of history on the Capital Area Greenway system. The first proposal was presented to City Council back in 1969, but it wasn't until 1976 that the actual first Greenway Master Plan was adopted. It was then updated again in 1986 and then 1989, and that 1989 update is the most recent update that we've had to the Greenway Master Plan. And I'll point out that each time the plan has been updated, the system has grown. So when it first started in 1976, it only consisted of 77 miles of Greenway, and the most recent update that expanded to 270 miles of Greenway. We have a steering committee that is guiding our project, and it covers members from 22 3 different organizations, including 3 members that are from Parks Board. This is a list of all of the organizations that are represented on the steering committee, and we chose these organizations and these groups to represent these sort of interest areas like bike and pet advocates, economic development, social equity, arts, design and culture, recreation, health and fitness, environmental interests, transportation, public-private partnerships, and some other special interests. So the design review team is a parallel group to the steering committee. The design review team consists of staff from different city departments, and they will provide input along the way and also serve as a resource for the steering committee members should they have any questions. Thus far, we've had a social gathering with the steering committee that happened this past December, and then we were able to have our first 2 steering committee meetings before COVID-19 started, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to have our 3rd steering committee meeting in September coming up, and we'll be talking about draft recommendations and implementation strategies. So now we're getting into some of the work that we've already completed. We've done an existing system review, and basically that's a review of all of the documents that form what greenways are planned as of today. So we have that initial 1989 Greenway Master Plan, but then we've had all of these small area plans that have been completed since that time, and each one of those has some recommendations that may or may not have been in that original plan. So they, for the most part, have added to that along that time. Some of the major themes are that historically greenways have been envisioned as an environmental conservation tool, and so all of the greenways are in floodplains. The UDO is the key document that answers the who, what, where, how, and why of how greenways are implemented. The greenways are a key element of all of the different citywide plans, and those plans have to sort of emphasize a better connection between public transit and bicycle and pedestrian facilities, which includes greenways. So we've also we've done the needs assessment, and we're still actually working on the draft of that, but most of the work for it has been completed, and we've used a 2-prong approach. One is looking at the existing conditions of the system today and applying recommendations based on sound planning practice, but then also we have a parallel public outreach component that we're trying to incorporate as well. So we started by looking at some of our counts for trail users across the system. And so what you're looking at here is a spreadsheet that has 365 days worth of count data from each of our 10 counters. And I say 365 days because the counters were installed at different times over the last few years. So we don't have yet the same 365 days for all of them, but this is the best that we could do with the information that we have so far. But just looking at this information here, there are already some initial observations that sort of come up to the front. We can definitely tell that the pedestrians prefer the loop trails and the cyclists prefer the linear trails, and that's just based on the numbers. And if you look at the Walnut Creek Trail at Lake Johnson Park, significantly higher number of users total, but also of pedestrians than any other section that we have counters on. We're also able to tell that the loop trails are the highest volume used facilities. Anecdotally, up until this, when staff, including myself, are asked which trail is the most popular, we typically say the Neuse River Trail, because that's the one that we get the most questions on, where people can access it, where they should go to get a scenic view, and so forth. But the data is showing us that the Walnut Creek Trail is in fact the high, far and above most popular trail in our system. So we looked at, for the needs assessment and analysis of gaps and barriers. So we looked at the existing sidewalk network, bicycle network, transit access, and then at-grade street crossings. And all of this is to get a better idea of what stands in the way of people who want to get to the Greenway without using their car. So if they want to bike, if they want to walk, if they want to wheel in some other way. So when we look at the existing sidewalk network, this is a map of the existing sidewalk network shown in the gold color. And what you see in the purple are all of the segments of roadway that do not have a sidewalk on it. So even though there is a lot of gold on the screen, there's a significantly larger amount of purple. And especially if you look along the Neuse River Trail there, sort of in the central part of the trail, there are significant gaps in sidewalk network to get people to the trails there. Moving on, we are looking at the bicycle facilities, and all of the blue lines on this map are bike lanes, and the purple are the buffered bike lanes. Can you all see my arrow here? Like, can you see that? So these dark gray areas, thank you, Brad. These dark gray areas are 1/2 mile buffers around each of our trail access points. So that gives you a better idea of how close these bicycle facilities are to trail access points. And you can see that there are pretty significant gaps in the bicycle network. There are some facility types that we did not include in this analysis. There are sharrows and there are wide shoulders. But those types of facilities really are more utilized by more experienced cyclists. And we really wanted to cater this analysis to everyone who might access the Greenway system from age 7 to 70. Looking at transit access, all of the orange dots on this map are transit stops that are located within 500 feet of a trail access point, and all of the red ones are located within a 1/2 mile of a trail access point. And as you can see from this, there again are significant gaps in access to the Greenway network from nearby transit stops.
We saw a bunch of dolphins.
Does somebody have their
they're always going back and forth. Right
their sound on? Maybe they could put that on mute. All right, great, thank you. Okay, so this map shows pedestrian and cyclists involved in crashes between 2007 and 2018, and this is based on data that we obtained from NCDOT. And it shows not only where cyclist and pedestrian crashes have occurred, but also density of those crashes. So the areas shown in here along Western Boulevard, the Rocky Branch Trail, that are surrounded by that glowing orange, red, that's to indicate that that's a higher density of crashes that have occurred there. And all of these are at grade intersections, obviously, because it would have to be a conflict between a vehicle and a pedestrian. So this helps us learn where our challenging spots are and maybe where we should invest additional safety features to make sure that these don't happen. So just an overview of some of the findings from the gaps and barriers analysis is that most of the Greenway Trail access points have below 30% complete sidewalk network, including both sides of the street within the immediate vicinity of the access point. There's some pretty critical gaps in the bike network connecting to the trails. Trails that are further away from commercial areas don't have as much access to transit. I don't think that that's a surprise to any of us. And that the multi-lane at-grade crossings are less comfortable and shown to have a higher chance of crashes when users are crossing them. So next we looked at amenities along the Greenway, and the amenities for the Greenway system are defined in the 2014 Planning and Design Guide. So it includes wayfinding, comfort stations, which are the restrooms, benches, public art, and trash cans, fountains, and there are a few others there too. I'll get into that. So looking at wayfinding, this graphic is intended to show where there is wayfinding adjacent to an access point and where there is wayfinding adjacent to trail intersections where two trails come together. So all of the purple circles there are where there is wayfinding adjacent to an access point, and the orange is where there is not. And then the same thing with the little X's. Looking at comfort stations, this is probably the amenity that we get the highest number of requests for because it includes the restrooms. They are fairly evenly distributed throughout the Greenway system. Many of them are concentrated in our parks, but there are some gaps. If you look at the Walnut Creek Trail between Worthdale Park on the east and Lake Johnson on the west, there actually aren't any comfort stations in that area, and that's one of our higher utilized sections of the network. Looking at benches, I found this really interesting because I feel like it shows that we do have quite a few benches along the Greenway system. There are a couple of gaps. The Reedy Creek Greenway, specifically west of the North Carolina Museum of Art, is one of those areas. There is a gap between New Hope Road and New Bern Avenue on the Crabtree Creek Trail, but for the most part, there is seating that's fairly evenly spread across the system. Looking at public art, we just mapped the public art that is immediately adjacent to a trail that is not including what's on the North Carolina Museum of Art campus because that is their private property and not formally part of the Greenway system. But you can see that there are only a few locations where we have public art along the system, so we have a lot of area where we can improve on that. And some findings from the amenities assessment are that wayfinding signage is limited near access points and trail intersections. The conversations are concentrated near access points. The public art is limited. And that most of the trails have access to a good number of seating areas, but there are a couple of sections where we could improve upon that. And in summary, the existing sidewalk network and bike network limits the pedestrian and bicycle connectivity to access to Greenway. Refined street crossings could increase safety for all users. More strategic wayfinding signage is the need. The quality of infrastructure may require some updating, an updated funding structure to support that. So as I mentioned, we had had a couple of meetings with the steering committee prior to COVID-19, and we had a plan to do these public open houses and these in-person stakeholder meetings, and then have tabling at all of these special events throughout the summer. And with COVID-19, we had to adjust and put most of our focus into virtual outreach. So we do have an online survey. Initially, that was going to be up from March of this year until June, but we extended that by 2 months. It's still currently up, and it will be up until the end of this month. We have invested more in project advertising. We've placed 15 yard signs at strategic intersections across the Greenway system so that people are actually using the Greenway system will see those and learn about this project. We have advertisements on 100 of the Go Raleigh Transit bus routes. We put an advertisement in the Triangle area's Spanish-speaking newspaper. So we've really tried to get the word out in as many ways that we possibly can. So as of this morning, we have over 3,700 participants that have actually completed the online survey, which I think is fantastic. We've received almost 2,800 comments and had over 7,000 views of the survey. The major themes we've heard so far through the online survey is that trail maintenance is one of the highest priorities for trail users. The street crossings and increasing the safety of those street crossings is another major concern. As far as new facilities, there's a strong demand for connections into downtown Raleigh. east-west and north-south connections, and regional connections to adjacent communities. There's a strong interest in developing greenway trails as transportation corridors. And there's a lot of support for changing our definition of where a greenway can occur so that it would not be just in a stream corridor, but outside of a stream corridor as well. So in addition to the online public outreach, we were able to do one tabling event before COVID-19, and that was at the Raleigh Half Marathon back in February. And in addition to the online survey, we have developed a list of 40 different organizations that are oriented towards persons of color, and tried to reach out to them directly via telephone, ask them how they're maintaining contact with their members and what the best way is to do that. So far, we've been able to make contact with 26 of those 40 organizations, and we continue to do that as the project moves forward. We've had multiple stakeholder meetings. We have conducted virtually using Zoom, just like tonight. We've had 3 for City of Raleigh staff. We had one for the bike and run clubs, mobility advocates. We had 2 for staff from the neighboring jurisdictions. We had a developer-oriented one, one for BPAC, and one for the East Coast Greenway and the Mountains to Sea Trail staff. So the major themes that we've heard through all of this is that connectivity is a key priority within Raleigh and throughout the region, and to reach destinations. Maintaining the existing system is a higher priority over expanding the system. Funding is a key obstacle, as it is with most public facilities. User conflicts and safe bike pedestrian access to the system are issues. There is a desire to have greenways that serve everyone, regardless of what their purpose is, if it's recreation or if it's transportation. There's an interest in having events along the greenway. We've heard about the it's a like glow-in-the-dark nighttime parade that they have in Atlanta on their Beltline, where folks just come out and they dress up in everything that can glow in the dark. So that's pretty cool sounding. The last item on this is something that I found interesting, is that there are a number of communities that have expressed their feeling that greenways are more of an amenity versus a necessity. And I feel like that we've certainly gotten that feeling more from the groups that we have reached out to directly versus the people that have participated in the online survey, who see it as more of a necessity rather than just an amenity. So with all of that public outreach that we have done thus far, I am absolutely excited to hear if you guys have any thoughts on any other ways that we haven't done already to reach out to additional people, to additional groups. Any input that you all could provide, I would love to hear that.
Just before we get to the larger group, it'd be great if we could have like a focus group for anybody who's interested here, maybe quarterbacked by our Greenway committee chair.
Mm-hmm.
Just during business hours or whatever, we could do a doodle or something. But I think I'd imagine there's a lot of interest in this group and getting into a focus group, like the others had as well. You could just run it the same way.
Okay.
It's just as a small aside before everybody says that. And is that something that's possible we could do in the next couple
yes.
weeks?
Yeah,
Cool.
we can do that.
Awesome. Cool. So that's resolved. Any other questions for Chris?
I was impressed by your outreach, Chris. It seemed like you did a good job.
That's David.
The word out, and I know it's difficult to get people engaged. I think that this is one of the most important plans that we've worked on in my time on the board. And yeah, I know that there is I don't know what resources you have as far as like paid media, but it's really easy to target communities online, as evidenced by the tampering in our elections. And it's very cost effective. So if you have a goal that you haven't met in any given community, you can do it with a pretty small ad budget.
You're talking about like Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can target people down to the, the smallest neighborhood.
Good. Thank you. That's a good suggestion. We will look into that, and I think we can work that out.
Chris, I wanted.
No, go ahead, Beverly. Sorry.
Okay. Chris, yeah, there's been lots of news articles and everything else about the increase usage of the Greenway during the pandemic, and I know that we obviously have safety protocols and everything else, but one of the plans had been to grab people as they were on the Greenway. Have you all investigated whether there's a way, cleaning an iPad and social distancing and masks and all of that of actually touching some of, or without touching, some of the folks who are on the Greenway? I mean, you all know I'm an active user of it, and the increase in the diversity of the folks I've seen on the Greenway. We know all the bike shops are slammed, but the number of pedestrians on the Neuse River, and sometimes I see them places where I think, wow, you've walked a long ways, because I know there's no access point any place close to this. So I still feel like, when you're out walking or riding your bike and I see that sign that says, do the master plan, sorry, but it's the print's this big, and you're not going to stop and do that then, and you're going to forget about it when you get home. So it still seems like we're missing that current user expanded. I really am most interested in that expanded use base that I'm seeing out there. And of course, I'm really interested in signage, because I would argue that we have no strategic wayfinding sign. We have those little flags, but you get to Anderson Point, and I cannot tell you how many times I've been asked, which way do I go to get to the Neuse River Trail? And why we don't have a 4-foot by 4-foot contextual sign there blows my mind.
Question for you. Have you been to Anderson Point in the last 2 weeks?
Yes, I was there Friday.
Okay, so did you see we just put in brand new signage at Anderson Point?
Is it as you come up Crabtree Creek?
There,
right
so if you come up Crabtree Creek, there's already a sign there. But if you take a right, you know how the trails that are actually in the park sort of connect into, and then it's kind of confusing there. You don't know which way. We have brand new signage there. And then when you go a little bit further down the Neuse River, there's a split that one section just sort of goes towards the river and the other goes to the right. We have new signage there as well. So we had with the signage program, we had a base bid list of signs, and that's what our consultant is finishing up now. But as soon as they're done with that, we're going on to additional signs. So we actually are making pretty good progress on that. And if there are any specific locations that you know of,
well, there's one.
I know you do.
There's
so please
one
send
place.
those. Yeah, please send those to me, and I'll add them to the list.
Well, the one place, and I encourage my colleagues on this board, if you come on the Walnut Creek Trail, which you've just identified as a heavily used, if you're coming from Centennial Campus, it goes nowhere. I have answered the question from people who've come from Chapel. It's like a regular joke. If you're there by the Bain water plant, you can't figure out how to get back onto the trail. It dumps you out. And actually, if you follow the little flag sign, you end up I've got lots of pictures. I'll send you a full email.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to get back to the call out survey type things. We had initially planned to do those on site, like actually stop people. And we sort of put that on hold when COVID came about. And what we've noticed is that people on the trails don't wear masks because they're not intending on talking to anybody unless they're talking to the people that are with them. So for the time being, we just didn't want to put anybody in that kind of situation where they might have to be in close contact with somebody that isn't wearing a mask. So it's something that we can sort of certainly explore. Maybe we could take masks with us and ask people to put them on if they're going to participate. Yeah, so that's all I can say. We'll look into it. Anyone else?
Yeah, Jennifer.
Chris, thanks for the thorough report. Two things. I want to back up Beverly and agree that the wayfinding, I see that as a real immediate need, that we need to really identify some areas that just need some signs like ASAP. And, you know, it really just shouldn't, I don't understand why it takes so long. It's been a while for some of these areas where they've been signless. I know Beverly's been talking about it for the past year. And I know a lot of folks that are out there biking, and they mention it to me constantly. So that, and then also I found your last comment on the previous slide really interesting, where you said that some of the focus groups that you went out to said that they see the Greenway as more of an amenity, a recreation amenity, and not a necessity. I was just wondering if you could sort of explain that a little bit. Is that because these are groups that they do a lot of biking on streets, and so they don't see the Greenway as something that's all that needed?
No. I mean, I really think that, you know, we've really done a concerted effort to target a diversity of people based on education, based on income, based on race. And we know that people, the lower income people, are definitely more likely to have less access to healthy food. They're more likely to have multiple jobs, and they're more likely to experience conditions like obesity. So if you're doing all of those things, if all of those things apply to you, then using a Greenway is probably not on your radar. You know, if you have 2 or 3 jobs, if you have kids, all of these things that you're trying to balance, I just don't think that they're thinking about the Greenway that way.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Any other questions for Chris?
Well, the presentation is not done.
Yep.
I just got to this point so I could get some feedback from you guys, but I will move quickly through the rest of it.
Sorry about that.
It's okay, no problem. So we'll move on to what we're hearing. And is that we should be investigating some policy changes, maybe in the UDO and how the UDO defines what a Greenway is. Look at our policies for easement dedications, consider development-built trails, maybe provide incentives for trail development, and look at alternatives to funding. The trail classifications are something that we have been told should be simplified. These were developed based on, sort of to run parallel to how roadways are classified. And most of our trails don't really fit neatly into these trail classifications. So looking at those and simplifying them would probably be something that we should look into doing. And then as far as prioritizing trails, make sure that trails are equitably dispersed to increase access to the system, and also increase connectivity within the city and also regionally. Maintenance is a huge priority to people that have responded to our online survey, and looking at ways to increase funding for that. Addressing barriers to some of the maintenance needs that we have. We've heard that from all the focus groups, the one pop-up event we had, and the online survey. Prioritize amenities. Wayfinding is one of them, as you all know. Lighting, and then improving the at-grade street crossings. And then the next steps as we move forward. We're going to continue to collaborate with the community organizations that I mentioned. I'm hoping to schedule our 3rd steering committee meeting, probably for sometime in September. We'll be discussing draft recommendations. we're going to continue to do our public outreach, develop an implementation plan, develop and vet a draft master plan. And we're anticipating taking it to council for their adoption in summer of 2021, next summer. So we'll probably be bringing a draft document to you all in early 2021. And the intent is to set up a couple of meetings for you all so that you'll be able to get the draft, digest it, and then give us feedback that, you know, if we need to make any edits or changes, so forth at that point. So that is a presentation. Do I have any additional questions?
Chris, I have one for you.
Mhm.
As far as the when you say improve lighting,
Mhm.
does that include tunnels as well?
Yeah, it's system wide. Yeah, it's tunnels, it's bridges, it's
Okay.
major intersections of trails.
Okay, I mentioned that because of the Walnut Creek Trail. Lighting is, especially in the tunnels, are not good at all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Beverly.
I do want to give a shout out to Sally, because the cleanup of the, we were having rain earlier in our pandemic experience, and the cleanup was so much faster than has been the case in the past. And so I want to say thank you for that. And it makes a big difference. On the maintenance, and this isn't really the master plan issue as much as it is just a question people get with all the different projects that are in the works, like the one over behind Hodge Road and other places where it's on the calendar. You all are working on design, you're working on a solution. It would be just super to have some kind of sign for people to know that their tax dollars were actually being used in fixing the problem that they see as a problem, and rather than finding it solved later. And just knowing that work is underway is really an important community builder.
Great. I echo that for the Crabtree Creek on Durley. Probably needs a road because it's coming. Same thing at the end over by Umstead. It's coming. Finally. Any other questions for Chris? This is really great.
Just props. It was a great presentation. Very thorough.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Good overview. Yeah. And the slides are online as well. So thank you. Well done.
Sure. Thank you.
Our lobbying work for more money does not end.
No.
Anyway. Great. All right. So we have some meeting minutes from, I believe, February. It's the last time we officially met. Did everybody have a chance to review those? All right. I entertain a motion to approve those or amend.
So moved.
I believe I have a move from Lex. We'll have a second.
Second.
Great, Charlie. All right. Any objections? Great. You're good. You can do it that way. All right. So we move to the director's report. Oscar.
So good evening, everyone. To say it's been a eventful summer is an understatement. Never expected 2020 to be the year that it is, but there have been a lot of positives here over the last several months. First off, I did want to kind of touch base on a couple of Park, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board reappointments. On May 5th, 2020, Marcia Presnell Jeanette was reappointed to the Park, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board. So congratulations, Marcia. And on July the 7th, both Dave Toms and Dr. Carol Love were also reappointed to the Park, Recreation, and Greenway Advisory Board. So congratulations, Dave and Dr. Love on being reappointed. A couple of big items that I kind of wanted to touch on. On May 19th, City Council approved a 5-year memorandum of understanding with the Dixpark Conservancy, which was really kind of focused on the master plan process for Dixpark, and as well as a funding agreement that they have with the city, the Conservancy, and donor recognition and a committee structure. So that was really a big step forward in moving forward our relationship with the Dixpark Conservancy. Then on June 16th was kind of a fairly big milestone in Dixpark as well. Council approved to move forward with awarding the Dixpark and Gateway Plaza design contract to Michael Van Valkenburg and Associates to start the design work on that. That's basically a $3.9 million contract that's being funded totally by the Dixpark Conservancy. So work is moving forward on that here very soon. And we're looking forward to seeing some results at some time in the future on that. The summer has been very interesting, like I had mentioned, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. There has been a lot of challenges based on what we can operate or open, just really based on orders from Governor Cooper, the CDC, and the Department of Health. As you all know, we're currently in a phase 2 stance right now. Early on in the pandemic, you all remember that parks and greenways really pretty much serve the entire community as places for them to recreate, get out of the house, and really be able to kind of stay sane during these trying times. So over time, we have slowly and methodically opened up various park amenities back to the general public based on recommendations from Governor Cooper. So as of right now, we pretty much have half of most of our park amenities open. We still are in phase 2 of the reopening plan, at least through August the 7th. So August 7th, we may go ahead and reopen up some additional park amenities to the general public once we receive direction from Governor Cooper. But 2 of the big items that I really wanted to point on as far as our services offered for this summer. On June the 29th, our recreation staff started offering summer camps to the area children. They did a fantastic job making sure they put a lot of safety protocols, information for the parents, so they can go ahead and make informed decisions if they wanted to go ahead and send their kids to summer camp this summer, so they can go ahead and have that socialization aspect. So far, everything has been going well. Everything's been modified, a lot of safety protocols in place, and we, unfortunately, just kind of due to physical distancing and some other safety measures, we've had to really lower the amount of children that we can serve with summer camps. But so far, we've gotten really great response in our check-in procedures and all the safety procedures that we have in place to serve us for summer camps. So really wanted to let the recreation staff know they've done a fantastic job in the planning and execution of having summer camps available this summer. Also on July 6th, our staff reopened up 7 of our 8 swimming pools back to the general public. And so far, once again, a lot of safety protocols in place as far as, limiting the number of people in pools at any given time. It's been fantastic. We have received nothing but praise on all the work being done to make sure we offer aquatics amenities to the community during the pandemic. And we're going to continue offering, keeping the pools open through at least Labor Day, possibly even more depending on our staffing situation. Because as you all know, once school goes back in session, we start losing lots of our lifeguards, and that has always been our challenge. So we'll continue trying to keep pools open and available to our patrons as much as possible. And then finally, another note that we were able to pull off this summer, staff was able to partner and coordinate with the Conservation Corps North Carolina this summer to offer a youth conservation corps program. And really, it's really aimed at high school age individuals who may have an interest in working in either an environmental field or an outdoor field. And so a group of about 10 individuals were working with us, and they have been working on various environmental and maintenance projects along the Walnut Creek watershed and some of the nature preserves. So tomorrow is our last day on the job with us, and so they've done a great job, and I'm sure you all had the opportunity to possibly, go out and interact with the youth during that time frame. So it's a great program. We've had some great volunteers and great participation. We're really looking forward to continuing that program in years to come. So I know there was a lot of other additional items on the director's report, but I can keep on going on and on. But you all had that to read at your leisure. And if you all have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any. Thank you.
Great. All right. Dr. Love. Bottom left. I think you got to unmute yourself, Dr. Love.
All
There
right.
you go.
Question about the 15-year partnership MOU. That's rather extensive. Is that normal with the Conservancy predicts? I was just curious when I read that 15 years time frame for the MOU.
I'm sorry, Dr. Love. I didn't catch your question.
Okay, the question is about the 15-year MOA with the Conservancy for Dix. It's a part of your report. I was just curious about the length of that agreement. Is that normal? 15 years is a long time. So the first page of your report.
I believe that may be just a 5-year MOU, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if the 15-year is a typo. I
can jump in if you want me to. This is Kate.
All right, thank you, Kate.
Yeah. It is a 15-year MOU that was approved by council, and the intent of the length of that agreement was really to be a general umbrella agreement that basically affirms the public-private partnership. And so there will be a number of sub-agreements that will have a lot more specificity to it. But in conversations with the Conservancy, there was a intent for them to be able to demonstrate to their donors that they were the long-term partner of the city in the creation of Dixpark. And so they felt like a longer agreement was beneficial to their fundraising efforts. And so that was one of the reasons that that time frame was decided on.
Okay, just curious because I hadn't seen that type of agreement for that length of time before in any of my other experiences. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Kate.
All right, Marcia.
I wanted to say that I was able to visit and spend some time with a Conservation Corps young people over at Dixpark. They were wonderful, great, thoughtful group of young people. It was very uplifting. If the city's fortunate enough to have them another group next year, I really encourage other Parks Board members to take that half hour and go talk with them. I hope I was useful speaking with them, but it was definitely good for me to be with them.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Marcia. Any other questions for Oscar? All right. Oscar, thanks so much. Thanks for your hard work. I know this has been a really tough time. Thanks to all staff, really, for this has been the weirdest time.
Definitely has. Everybody's really stepped up to the plate. So, if you have the opportunity to say thank you to any of our staff members, please do so. Thank you.
Yeah. And thanks for all the hard work on the bond that we didn't necessarily get to use. I know we all appreciated that process, even if it ended up being postponed a little bit.
We'll hit the restart button next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I don't know that we have parks or Greenway Urban Trees updates today, but Charlie, did you want to say anything sort of about where Fletcher is?
Yeah. So, as all of you know, unfortunately this year, due to the pandemic, we had to cancel this year's Fletcher Awards. There was a really nice posting on social media that Mary and her team did to honor all of the award attendees for this year. I think I sent that link out to everyone back in May when it was first sent out. And now we're just at the point of how do we want to give the award recipients their actual awards. I've been talking with Mary. She came up with the idea that there could potentially be a day where the award recipients would drive up to either City Hall or somewhere outside of there, and they could be a photo op where we or a member of the board, obviously with current restrictions, face masks, you name it, but do some sort of photo op that's socially distanced just to try and still have a little bit extra special meaning to that award. The other idea that was passed around was potentially having the award winners come to one of our regularly scheduled meetings, but considering that most of those seem to be online for the time being and for the foreseeable future probably, I don't think we can really electronically give them the justice that they deserve. So just wanted to open up the floor for anyone's thoughts on that. If people are fine with doing the social distance award presentations, we can try and collect nominations or nominees or volunteers rather. Sorry, it's been a long day, and we can move forward with that.
That sounds great.
It was a really nice video. It was nicely done.
Yep.
All credit goes to Mary and her staff. So,
Well, props to Mary and her staff for sure. I mean, I like the curbside idea or something within guidelines, of course. Some celebrations have to happen, and we just swore in our new council member this week, so some acknowledgement would be nice. I like your creative idea. I mean, Nash Square is right there across from City Hall.
yeah. All right, well, I can let Mary to go ahead and kind of proceed planning that from a staff standpoint. And then as we get closer to whatever date they decide on, I'll reach out to you all for volunteers to potentially help deliver these awards.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
So I don't think we have any updates from Blue Way today. And have they sent any more information out y'all's way? Those of you on the Blue Way committee. All right.
Lex, you don't have anything to say about the news?
You're muted, but yeah.
I can't hear you.
Sorry, I think I was muted. I have no updates.
Yeah.
You do.
I just didn't know if they.
I don't think there's been any action that I know of.
Yeah. Cool. Great. So it's on to my report. The work plan was in there. That's being submitted to City Council.
You skipped one nomination.
Oh. So we need a nomination committee designee. That's part of what I normally would talk about. My 2 years are up as chair. So a nomination committee is usually a committee of one person to nominate for elections in September. So the nomination person essentially accepts nominations from people or / prods people to nominate. In the past, when a chair is finishing their 2 years, typically the chair would then do it because they're not eligible to run again. So I'm happy to do it. If somebody else would like to do it and feels very strongly about it, we can talk about it.
Hey, Brad, this is Kendall, mate. I just want to say, regardless of what we do, you have done a phenomenal job leading what we're doing right now. And I appreciate your leadership. And if anybody, recommend anybody is fine, but I think the work that you've done has been critical, especially being out for the last 3 or 4 months not meeting each other. I think the work that you've been pushing and the work that you did with the bonds, and sad to say, the work that we did with the bonds, people that showed up and did that, hopefully we'll see some good results. But I appreciate your leadership, man. That's my,
Appreciate it.
that's me. And also, I like your haircut. Who cut it?
My husband.
My man.
About 3 weeks ago, it looked terrible. I can't go down to a 4. I gotta stay at like a 6 or 7.
I see that you look bad. That's all I can see that looks bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. I appreciate you, man. Seriously. And I appreciate your leadership. I mean that.
Thank you. I was gonna say, in regard to all those interesting conversations we had in the spring, it was like a little bit of like we all got to this point where we had these intense chats and then it stopped. We didn't see each other.
Yeah.
And this is part of my report too. I'll get back to the nomination thing, but this would normally have been our retreat year for us to talk through issues and talk through things with each other. Usually we do a retreat every 2 years. We lost that because of this. And normally we don't meet in August. So those of you who are relatively new, we don't usually meet in August. But something we could do in August is just have a meeting that we run. It still has to be public, obviously, but just have a meeting that we run together and sort of deal with some of those issues that came up during the bond process that are more of just board issues. And just sort of talk through what our goals are and share. My goal would be that we share sort of what we want out of the board, what we want out of our time together. What obviously a lot of that is actually represented currently in the work plan that we have for the next year in terms of presentations. But that would be more like value sharing and getting everybody on the same page. If everybody'd be up for it. Otherwise, we don't usually have it. I can send a survey out and we can just vote on it. If we're interested, but the thought would be that we would meet during our normal time, but in August, but not ask staff to do anything to prepare for it. We would just I would prepare an agenda and work on it.
Yeah, I think we all put a lot of work in on it. There was only one person that didn't do a lot of work. That was Dexter. I know, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding, Dexter. No, but no, we did a lot of work with that, and hope that work that we all put in, I say all put in, will not go to haste or waste, right? Because there were folks that was there that been fighting for things for 20, 25 years, and they finally got on the sheet. And so let's not remiss that, and let's hold that accountable to the work that we're trying to do and being advocates for those works that we do.
Is there interest in us having a meeting to sort of talk about values and hopes and dreams next month?
I'm in favor. I think it's a phenomenal suggestion.
And a secondary benefit of it might be if you're interested in potentially running for one of the 2 positions, it might be an opportunity to sort of advance some ideas and play around and see if folks are sympathetic to sort of that vision.
I think it's
a great idea too.
I think it's a good idea. I'm going to be away the 3rd week and probably not going to be able to join.
We might do a doodle.
Yeah.
And just see if we
David, what about you, buddy?
What about me? What?
What about you, buddy? My friend.
What's that?
What do you feel about what he just said?
I want to see you guys. I want to talk. I enjoy open conversation.
All right. So it sounds like there's a pretty much agreement on that. So what we'll do is we'll send out an email and we'll try to find a safe way for us to have those chats too, and a comfortable way for us to have those chats too. Is there anybody who objects to us planning a meeting next month at some point? We'll do a doodle. I'll talk to Giovanna about what's comfortable for her in terms of timing. Just because we don't want to keep her forever late one night. But yeah. And we'll so manage that. And then in terms of the nomination committee, which was what the original action item of this was, yeah, so I can't really nominate myself. I just let you know that's sort of how it usually goes. But if somebody wants to nominate me, then yeah.
Nominate Brad Johnson as the nominating committee.
I'd like to second that.
I'll second.
Great. Any objections? Cool. So I'll manage that. So if you have a nomination that you would like to advance for chair or vice chair, you may send it to me. And that's how that works. And I'll collect them. And then after, whenever we meet in August, we'll send out that information so that we can vote in September. I think I'm getting that right.
You know, we're in a covert season. I hope that as long as you keep your hair cut short, I think we'll keep you like it is. I mean, you got to have fun. You got to laugh through this crazy self-care, right?
That's all we can do. That's all we can do. All right. Great. So that's good. We got all that taken care of. Any questions for me before we let Kate talk to us, because we're excited about some Dixpark updates. Right. Hey, Kate.
Hey, it's great seeing everyone. I'm going to share my screen as well and provide an update on Dixpark. So can everyone see my screen? Great. So first of all, it's great to see everyone. Kate Pierce with the Dixpark planning team. Just as an FYI, this is the eve of our 5-year anniversary of the purchase of the property. So happy 5th birthday to the park, which is pretty exciting. Maybe you've seen some of the social posts that have been going on this week, but just so much has happened over the past 5 years, and I can't wait for the next 5. So on that note, really 3 things that I wanted to talk with y'all about today. One is a response to council to create a connection between Dixpark and Chavis Park. The second is to update you on some revised phase 1 project priorities. And the third, which Oscar already foreshadowed, is the agreements with the Dixpark Conservancy. So first, on the connecting John Chavis Memorial Park to Dixpark. At a February council meeting, the mayor asked that we look into some improvements to create a stronger pedestrian connection between Chavis Park and Dixpark. Staff from multiple departments got together and looked at what would be a short-term potential route and a longer-term potential route to connect the 2 facilities. And staff suggested that in the short term, Lenore Street and South Saunders would be a great direct connection. And then in the longer term, looking at the improvements to Western Boulevard with the BRT project. So on June 16th, Council approved the following short-term recommendations, and Parks and Transportation reallocated some funding to conduct some basic audits of the pedestrian experience. So looking for where is lighting needed, where are some sidewalk repairs needed, are there some ramp and crosswalks that need improvement, and making those small repairs. In addition, looking to explore some bike improvements. Mainly that would be probably the addition of sharrows to the right-of-way to improve the bicycle condition between the 2 parks. Some basic maintenance, removing invasive species, and looking at some hazard vegetation along the routes, basically cleaning up that corridor so it provides a safer connection. And then I think the one that people are probably most excited about is creating some interim wayfinding, the potential use of art to create a cultural connection between the 2 parks. The idea is that with that small $50,000, we'll be able to do these improvements within the next calendar year and really create a corridor to connect the 2 parks. Longer term, we are looking at the Western Boulevard project, the bus rapid transit project that's going to improve the Western Boulevard corridor. That project is still in the planning stages, but what we have talked with Transportation and Transit about is making sure that there are strong pedestrian and bicycle amenities along that route. And when the BRT line stops, whether that be at Wilmington or another cross street, what are the improvements that are going to be needed to get us all the way to Chavis from a bike pedestrian side of things. So that will be part of the BRT planning process as a longer term, more direct connection between the two parks. So I'm excited that those short-term recommendations are moving forward and funding was allocated to make that connection. Regarding Dixpark and phase 1 project priorities, this is probably a map that is familiar to everyone, but we really have the goal with our phase 1 projects to improve the park edges, create strong entries and connections, and really create a variety of experiences for park goers. Now, with everything that has happened this past year, we have prioritized our work to focus on a couple of projects. That is the design of the Plaza Play along Lake Wheeler Road. We have submitted 4 grants to the Department of Environmental Quality, the State Attorney General's office, and a private foundation to initiate the creek and landfill feasibility work. I'll talk about the chapel renovation in a moment, and then there are 2 additional planning level initiatives, including a zoning and development review to basically figure out how could we build Dixpark. And we have done initial analysis on an equity plan to ensure that the development and the work we're doing at Dixpark has equitable benefits for all. So that's the work that is in progress. Everything else that was outlined as part of our phase 1 plan has basically been deferred until future resources, both staff and funding, are made available. So they're not going anywhere. They're just deferred. So we've got a short list of things that are underway today. Oscar mentioned that we went through a consultant selection process and ended up hiring MVVNA with a host of local experts to design the Plaza Play project. That design is fully funded by the Dixpark Conservancy. It will be managed by City of Raleigh, the Dixpark team. And shortly, you will see an RFQ coming out from our construction management group soliciting for a construction manager at risk to come on board during the design process to partner with the design team to ensure that the project stays on budget and on schedule as we move forward, which is very exciting. The All Faiths Chapel is another project that is being led by the Dixpark Conservancy. We actually leased that building to the Conservancy. The entire renovation is being funded and managed by the Conservancy, and then it'll be turned back over to the city for operation once that renovation is complete. We expect that to be completed at the end of this year, early next. And then depending on where we are with gathering limits and COVID and everything else, we'll develop a program so that becomes a community space and event space. We will allow third-party rentals of it, and it will also serve as staff offices both for the Dixpark team and the Conservancy team in the back classroom area. So we're very excited about that project that's moving forward right now. In addition, just to follow up on a couple of things, the Memorandum of Agreement was signed on May 19th. It is that umbrella agreement that establishes the committee structure. It highlights a donor recognition and naming process that we're currently working on. And it is meant to be that longer term kind of shared vision between the city and Conservancy, where there will be many more sub-agreements that outline our operational working together. But I think what's important and what I think is the next item on the agenda is for the leadership committee, we expanded the leadership committee to 12 members. It is an evolution of what was the Dix Master Plan Executive Committee, which had 8 members. 8 of the leadership committee will be voting and 4 will be non-voting. And here you see the council established seats. So highlighted in green are 2 yet to be filled seats. 1 will be dedicated to the community committee. And just to pause there, we are currently in a review of community committee applications. We received over 500 applications for 20 spots on the community committee, which is an amazing outcome for us. And I just want to say the caliber and passion of so many of those applicants, it really is inspiring and makes me hopeful for the future of the park process because there was so much interest. That committee will be established at 40 people, and that committee will select a member of their own to sit on the leadership committee. Because one thing we heard through the master plan process was that there was a disconnect between the executive committee and the advisory committee. So we hope that this seat will help strengthen the relationship between those two groups. In addition, we also heard through the master plan process that this board would like to have more connection to the Dixpark planning process. So there is a seat reserved for a Parks Board member on the leadership committee. And I think y'all will probably be coming back around to that in a moment. The non-voting members are 2 city staff members, which include Oscar and Tansy Hayward, who is the Assistant City Manager over Parks. And then 2 of our agency representatives, being NC State and the Department of Agriculture, who are our neighbors around the park. So we thought that this was a good leadership group to help us with the implementation of the master plan. In addition, we signed a funding agreement with the Dixpark Conservancy that really supports a lot of phase now work. So that includes the design of the Plaza Play, the pre-construction services for CMAR. It outlines a payment schedule and process for funding additional requests and requires ongoing reporting. And what I wanted to share with y'all is just what I consider is a pretty amazing commitment from the Dixpark Conservancy to commit around $10 million to the phase now projects before any major public funding is committed to the park. So as you can see on this chart, it includes the Plaza Play work, the entire rehabilitation of the chapel. There was thought that we would be able to renovate one of the stone houses, the superintendent's house, but because of basically the cost of the chapel and wanting to really focus on that, that project has been deferred, but there were some sunk costs into that work. You can see there's support for ongoing planning and project management. And one thing I did want to highlight is the Conservancy has allocated nearly $2 million to early park improvements. And that includes everything from wayfinding and signage to benches and picnic tables and shade structures. Really, how are we going to make the park a more enjoyable experience over the next 1 to 3 years while we wait for some of these larger projects to come online? And so I'm really excited about the work we'll do with our park maintenance staff to really improve the daily park visitor experience while we're waiting on some of these larger projects to come online. So that represents about a $10 million commitment, which is approximately a $3 million increase from their original commitment of $7 million. So that is a very quick overview of where we are. I believe you received a memo from me that went into a lot more detail on everything, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about any of this or anything else Dixpark related.
Any questions for Kate? Beverly, yeah.
I've got 2 questions. On the concept of the corridor, when I think back to what Chris was talking about with the Greenways master plan, and we were talking about having greenways that aren't just in the floodplain, it seems to me that if you ask most people, once the corridor is created, whether it's the BRT or the Lenore Street, the people are going to think of it as a non-green greenway, and that sort of is a positive transition. And so instead of, I would just wonder if we could stop calling or move towards calling it an addition to the greenway system, and look at it in that way, rather than just as a corridor, because we do have existing pavement greenway that is not out by Falls River and stuff along to get to Abbott's Creek. That is on the sidewalk. It is not. It's not all of our greenway is not floodplain corridor.
Right.
So just a thought to connect that. And then my other question is, could you give us an update on where DHHS is on their move?
Yeah. So to address your first comment, I believe the Greenway Master Plan is also looking at this urban trail concept. which potentially might be outside of the stream corridor. And I think this could potentially serve as almost like a pilot for that type of work. Regarding DHHS, I don't know if anyone's been following the state budget discussion, but the current lease with the Department of Health and Human Services expires in 2025 on the eastern side of the property where the majority of the buildings are. We have not had any formal communication from them about they're needing to extend that lease. And we do know that in the most recent state budget, there was money allocated for their future facility, not construction money, but planning money. And so we are waiting to hear from DHHS whether or not they feel like they will be able to meet that deadline or if they will need a short-term extension to their lease on the property.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for?
Hey, Mr. Chairman, it's Chris Dillon. I've got a couple.
Great.
Hey, Kate, how are you doing?
Good. How are you, Chris?
Great. Are we, so with this chapel and the offices stuff, are we charging rent to these non-governmental entities?
So for the office space, we are not charging rent, but there will be some operational contribution from the Conservancy to that space. And they are paying for the entire renovation of the project. But for the use of the space for third parties, there will be a fee associated with that. So whether it's a wedding or a community group that wants to rent the large nave space, there will be a fee associated with that. I should note that the chapel officially is leased to the Conservancy and they're letting us use those offices.
Are we paying them rent?
We are not.
Also, if you could go back to that slide of who's on this board or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm trying to work off my phone. So the only person under 50 on there that I can tell is Corey Branch. Is that right?
Well,
I don't want to age anybody.
Stormy Fort, hold up. Stormy Fort in District C, District D, she's under 50.
She's not
Is she on that? I don't see that list.
Fine.
She should be on that. She'll be on that soon, but she's under 50.
No, Kendall, this is the leadership committee for Dixpark.
You're right. I'm sorry. You're right. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I love Tansy. She's under 50. I think she's 23. But the rest of them is old as dirt. So,
Chris, woo!
So I've got to go with Dr. Love that we have got to get young people involved in this. Teenagers.
Yeah.
It is bias, absolutely.
I mean, somebody, not a bias, an implicit bias. Go ahead.
That's an explicit bias, actually. So this is the oldest group of people I've seen in a long time that ain't the North Carolina Senate. So I would say that y'all need to change that up and get some buy-in from younger generation on that.
So just in quick response to that, the community committee, which is a 40-member group, we have been very intentional about reserving seats for the 15 to 24 age. And so I think you'll see a greater diversity of age, backgrounds, experiences on that community group. This group, you're right, it skews in certain directions, but we hope that, these two groups have two different functions. And through the community committee, we hope to capture that youth voice, that group would actually then report into this. But you also have an opportunity with, not to say this, that you have with your seat and the community committee seat to help diversify this group.
Well, I can tell you, I went to David Smith's 50th anniversary of his service with the state 10 years ago. I went to that party. So also, I feel kind of disconnected. I feel like there's a lot going on with Dix and the city, and there's a lot of I wouldn't say secret agreements, but agreements that are being made that are way, they're not being publicized, and they're definitely not being brought through the parks board. This additional lease and all these agreements, and none of us are seeing that. I mean, that's all being handled at the board and at the council table, and it's not even going through their own committees. So I would just caution, moving forward, you've got this elite group on this leadership committee, the same old names, the average age of that group. If I could do it right now, I'd say 62. You're not getting buy-in from the community. You're not getting young people. So I'd caution that that's setting you up for not a successful venture moving forward. But thank you, Kate. You're doing great work.
Well, that's one of the reasons we argued for this seat for our board, and I'm glad to see that the community group is also represented on there as well, because that was definitely angst from the advisory board about that, for sure. It can only go down, as you say.
I think once y'all see the community committee come together, I think you'll hopefully be reassured that we are being very intentional about including lots of different people formally in this process.
And I think we viewed the seat, our seat on this, as representative of the rest of the concerns of the rest of the park system, as we understood it. And so that voice hasn't been there historically. So,
well, here's the question I have. What's the breakdown of age, race, all that? What's the breakdown of that?
That's coming. Have you appointed the community committee yet?
No, that will be one of the first actions of the leadership committee.
So before that happened, then who was involved before this all was transpired? Then too, who was at the table then?
So if I think I'm answering your question, the memorandum of
hold on, who's making it short for you? Who was at the table?
So the memorandum of agreement was negotiated between City of Raleigh leadership and Dixpark Conservancy leadership. So that included the city attorney's office, city management, parks management, and then representatives from the Conservancy.
Made up of?
Mostly city staff on the city side.
And that's made up of?
Like the actual people?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was an assistant city attorney, Ben Mount, and then representatives from our department included Stephen Bentley and myself. And Oscar, we talked with Oscar about this agreement. And then on the Conservancy side, it was the Conservancy CEO and a couple of their board members.
So the elephant in the room is that how many people, diversity made up of color, was at the table during this decision making?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think that's a fair question, and to be direct,
it's a fair question. It is a fair question. Yeah. Okay.
So to be direct, nobody on that team, right?
Beyond how many? How many?
So the staff that were negotiating the agreements were the city attorney and city staff, and we are. I mean, I'm white, and the other two gentlemen are white. On the Conservancy side, but I do want to point out that the community committee, which we believe is the group that is going to drive the implementation process, is going to be reflective, if not overly reflective, of the community's demographics.
I agree with that, but you got to have folks that look like us to do that too. Not folks that look like the other race. We have to have those people that look like us, black folks or people of color,
Black and brown communities.
Right. To sit at those tables, because we don't need y'all to make decisions for us. But that's what has happened.
So how many people, Kate, are on the community committee, and then how many people are from the Parks Board?
So the community committee has not been established yet. We went through a public application process where we received over 500 applications. It will be established at 40 people, and the intent
40.
is for that to reflect the demographics of the community. So we are being very intentional about age diversity, about race and ethnic background diversity, about gender diversity, and experiential. And so you're going to see that group come together, and it's going to be largely reflective. And that is largely the group that is going to work to implement the Dixpark Master Plan. So we're not, as staff, making those decisions. The decisions are at that community committee table, and we are facilitating them as they move forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. I won't jump in on you. I'm just.
Oh yeah, no, it's a fair question. It's definitely a fair question.
It is a fair, you got to call it out. You call a spade a spade. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to bring it to the attention to the table now.
Yeah. So I hope at your September meeting, we will have a group of people to share with y'all that we had some of the most amazing applicants, including kids from Enloe and Southeast Raleigh High School, to students at Shaw and NC State, to retirees, and everyone in between. And so I think you'll see that group coming together as really not only reflective, but very intentional about ensuring that as this park develops, it does so in an equitable and representative way.
Mr. Chairman, this is this is Chris Dillon again.
This is why we have
I could just
the video, so you can raise your hand.
I would just ask that. I think Dr. Love, over the years that she served on this board, has taught me so much that we have to have youth engaged. So whether it's an ex officio member that's non-voting, just like on the Board of Governors for UNC system, or the community college system, like I would suggest maybe an Athens Drive, the student body president, or somebody in that area, team, be engaged in this, and not for diversity's sake, but for buy-in for the community as we move forward. I really think that we need a youth involved.
Chris, I would challenge that too. Besides Athens Drive, I would ask somebody from Southeast Raleigh Promise, Jennifer Costello, to be involved, Miss Baker to be involved in that area, and they can identify teams that they think they can speak to that. Because all teams, whether they're of color, can't speak to it if they don't understand it. So we got to get folks that can train them, that know what they're talking about, to get them to be at the table to speak to that. So now Dex can disagree with me, but I think Southeast Raleigh Promise, along with Jennifer Costello and Miss Baker, will be a major partner to help drive some of that work.
So what I'm hearing, just let me clarify. Dr. Love, go ahead. I'll go ahead.
Just wanted to raise a question about 15 youth. I heard you bring high school students, but I wanted to know what's the age range.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, can't hear you.
I wanted to know what's the age range for the 15 slots that you mentioned for use. I guess I want to know, what are you defining use as?
Right. So we are using kind of census categories, and the youth slots are 15 to 24. So we want to capture both the high school age and the college age within the youth category. And I think everyone is right. And I also just want to point out, when we establish the committee, there are going to be gaps in representation, right? We are going to try to be as intentional as possible. But I think what you will see through our engagement process is a doubling down on reaching into communities that might be underrepresented in traditional committee structures. I would challenge all of our boards and commissions. If you looked at the City of Raleigh Boards and Commissions report, we are underrepresented in all of our boards and commissions. And so what we did is we looked at the demographics of Raleigh as a whole, and are trying to match, if not over-represent on the community committee. And so it won't be perfect, but I can promise you we are going to be very intentional about reaching to a broad variety of interests to make sure that everyone that wants to be involved in this project can be involved.
Okay, I appreciate that, but I think what I hear Chris keep saying is that on the leadership committee itself, that there needs to be at least a youth representative, not just the community committee, but the leadership committee.
And that's something I'll have to talk with. So this group was established by council, and maybe there is an opportunity to bring someone in an ex officio way. But since this was kind of a council approved group, I'll need to figure out in what capacity could we bring in that representation. But I think that's a good idea.
Okay, thank you.
And I think before maybe making the community group public, we could, if you could anonymize the data of the people who you've selected, potentially send it as like a little memo to this group, and essentially say like, does this feel comfortable in terms of your understanding of the diversity of our community, and who might we be missing in that anonymized way?
Yeah, let me provide a little bit of just background there so y'all know how we're going through this process. So with the 500 applicants, we are blind reviewing everyone. So we're not seeing names. All we're seeing is demographic details and the responses to their questions. And so it's gone through 2 reviews of staff, which have, or 2 review teams, and both review teams have been a diverse group of review teams. So the first group took it from 500 names to 100 names, and now it's with the second group that is going to take it from 100 names to 20 to 30 names to then make that final recommendation. And in each step along the way, we've been checking our demographic criteria, which includes age, gender, race and ethnic background, experience, and have been comparing that back to our original goals. So from the total applicant pool to the first review pool to the second review pool, we're being very intentional about making sure that we are checking back to our goals. I'll also note that we, during the application period, we got to kind of 3 weeks in and we realized we weren't hitting the diversity in the applicant pool. So we used paid media, we used other ways to reach directly into Council District A, Council District B. We reached directly into specific zip codes that we weren't seeing enough applications for, to ensure that our applicant pool was as diverse as it could be. And our intention with the recommendation is that it's going to be reflective of the city demographics, and be very intentional about things like the youth engagement and the engagement in traditionally underrepresented communities.
Well, this is Chris again. I'm sorry, my video is not working. I could make a motion that the board request council add somebody of under 18 to this leadership committee. I mean, I've never been proven wrong more than when Dr. Love talks about putting somebody young on it, because I'm like, well, they don't have any experience. Well, but they have a good idea.
They have an idea, and they can be briefed on what some of the more technical terms mean to then give input. I mean, they know what they desire in their community. They have dreams and hopes and interests for what community means to them. So, fair point there. And this is Lindsay.
Hey, guys, this is Ken again. I don't want to be the dead horse up, but I want us to be very careful. And I'm about people protesting, organizing young people. But I need to know what they're organizing and protesting for, because some don't get it. Because some don't understand truth. So therefore, if we put somebody on the committee, Chris, that don't really understand, never lived in that community, don't understand equity or don't understand systems, why they're doing this, I'm not going to vote for somebody just to put a kid on to hear a kid's voice. There's a difference between protesting, being strategic, and organizing. Go ahead.
I just want to be clear about where we are in this.
I voted on you earlier. Don't shoot me down. Go ahead. Don't shoot
I'm
me down.
I'm just trying to note what we actually have jurisdiction over here in terms of what we're recommending and what we're asking for as a board in this situation. They have asked us to send a nominee, and when we talked to folks and have been advocating for this, we had advocated for that to be the chair of the board, because they didn't have our voice on that executive committee at all. There's a secondary piece here, which is that we aren't necessarily, what I'm hearing as a group, we're not necessarily happy that there's not a youth voice, or we're not necessarily seeing the diversity we want to see in the community group yet. We haven't seen that group at all. So there's two things here. So there's two different things. The only thing we can do, they're not asking for our approval of this. It's been approved and adopted. And part of the frustration that I'm hearing from Chris too, and you, is that they did that sort of without us knowing about it. And that's one of the reasons we were pushing really hard on the Conservancy to make sure that we were at the table, because they literally had nobody outside that sort of clique at the table.
Well, Brad, we got young folks who don't even understand what marginalized communities mean.
I don't want to make that judgment. We're making judgment about hypothetical people that we actually don't have an ability to. So I don't want to get down that road necessarily.
Well, you might have to go to it to understand it there too now.
No, I think our responsibility today is to say we would like to emphasize the importance of the youth voice. The executive committee is very old, is what I'm hearing. And there's three folks talking. There's a larger group here we can be talking about, but I don't want to get into hypotheticals about who might ultimately be selected, because that's not our job in this case.
Totally agree.
Because I think that there's people that theoretically should have tons of experience that don't have a clue in hell what's going on either. So
I just bought 4 properties over that way. I just bought 4 properties on Lake Willow Road. So
An investment.
All day.
So in terms of this, what I'm hearing as a group, we would like to communicate is we really want to make sure there's youth voice, that there's diversity. We would like to see if we can see the composition. If anybody has any questions about the way that you're going about selecting people, I think that's a germane thing for us to talk about right now. But it'd be nice if we could see sort of the final outcome in terms of how all the measures you've done, even anonymized, before it gets sort of publicly announced, just in case we have any questions about that. Yeah, Dr. Love.
I'd like to suggest that once you get that list together, if you need a representation of young people who've been guided along the way, one group that you might appeal to are top teens. These are young people who are high school students that have been mentored, who have various experiences, and I think would be the kind of young people that you want involved in the process. So top teens is one group that you could contact their advisors if you need additional young people to serve, to represent this 15 age group.
I will say I've been really pleasantly surprised by the thoughtfulness and quality of applicants in that youth category. I don't think I was that on top of things when I was in high school.
Well, Mr. Chairman, this is Chris Dillon. I would just say the appointment for our board would be the chair, whoever the chair is elected. We obviously trust that person enough. But I also say we need to stress to council that there needs to be a youth representative, and that's the end of my piece. Thank y'all.
Else? All right. So no other questions for Kate. So then we need to move to our task here, which is to.
Hey, Kate, great job.
Thank you.
All right. So we need to appoint a representative to this, to the executive committee from our board.
What?
I nominate that it be the chair, and at this time, that's you, Brad, and that, as we just discussed, that'll be changing in the next few months.
Second.
I'll second that.
Cool. All right. Any objections to that? Great. So it is done.
We didn't put a vote to that. I'm not going to agree with that. I think it needs to be somebody who understands. No, I'm not going to vote on that. We need to put that to a motion and vote on that.
Okay. All those in favor of being our chair? Raise your hand. All those opposed? All right.
Make it be known, Kendall opposed.
Okay. All right. The next order of business, so we're shifting to system plan update. Any other questions about Dix before we get off of this topic? Great. Hey, TJ.
Everyone, good to see you all. In just a moment here to pull up the presentation. I'll keep the presentation brief today. Just going to be giving a quick update on the action item progress report that we've put together for you all. Do you see the full slide on your screens? Perfect. All right. So just to catch us all up to speed, since it's been a little while since we launched the system plan update, throughout the remainder of this year, we're going to be working on a number of things, broadly updating our Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources system plan. So first of all, we're looking to increase connectivity of our system. And most of this work falls under the umbrella of everything that Chris talked about earlier today with the Greenway Master Plan. So that's one component. Next, we're looking at new ways to promote equity throughout the park system. So that's a lot of the work that you all have seen over the last year or so. A lot of the new techniques that we put into practice as we were developing priorities for the Parks Bond earlier this year. Different ways that we're trying new ways to look at how we're allocating resources, how we're looking at our capital improvement planning to make sure that we're directing our investments and our attention to the communities that are going to benefit the most from all the services and resources that we provide. We're also looking at different ways to improve and measure park access and park quality throughout the system. Over the last year, we've worked with the National Recreation Parks Association on the 10-minute walk campaign. We were a grant recipient through that program. And that's really helped us to kind of revolutionize the way that we're measuring how well we're serving people in different parts of the city. Again, just to help us promote a more equitable and more accessible park system. And then finally, what we're going to cover today is a report on the progress that we've made so far towards the action items that we established in 2014 when the system plan was adopted. There are around 350 total action items as part of that system plan that's supposed to guide the work that we do over the next 20 years. And so for this first major update to the system plan, we're looking at those action items that we hope we would accomplish in the first 5 years after adoption and reporting back to you all on how well we've done in those 5 years. Just to give a brief overview of the system plan itself, as I mentioned, it was adopted in 2014 and is a long-range planning document. So its purpose is to guide us over a 20-year time horizon. And to keep it up to date over that 20 years requires periodic updates like the one that we're working through now. Functionally, the system plan feeds in as a supplement to the City of Raleigh's comprehensive plan. So it kind of provides us with some more focused direction that supports the overall city policies that the comprehensive plan captures. And then the city strategic plan is really kind of the tip of the spear of all of this that gives the city those short 3 to 5 year strategic objectives to really carry all that policy forward. Some of the bigger picture items, our vision statement, our guiding principles that were established during the system plan process are not going to change as part of this update. We still believe that the overarching vision and the guiding principles that you see on the slide here are every bit as relevant to our community today as they were when the system plan was adopted. But as you drill down a little bit farther, get into some of the objectives and individual action items that support these bigger picture ideas, that's where we're looking to make some updates. So the way that the system plan was set up, the action item, the action plan portion of it, is we divided everything that our department does into 8 subsystems. So these are things like greenways, athletics, natural environments, arts, historic resources. Each of those different subject areas got its own subsystem. And then there's a series of goals, objectives, and then action items as you drill farther down, so that you can have kind of big aspirational goals and then more strategic objectives beneath those goals, and then individual, very focused action items, helping us kind of take bite-sized pieces out of each of the objectives. So if we look at, this is kind of a report card, our action item progress report. You can see the grades that we've gotten for each of the 8 subsystems laid out here. Again, a lot of what was in the system plan was very aspirational, and this is mostly reporting on those things that we hope to achieve within 5 years of adoption. So there's a few areas that we've done very, very well in, and a few areas that there are some items where we're not quite on track, not quite as far ahead as we hoped we would be. But all in all, this is a pretty good progress report. Thinking back to when I was in school, this would be something my parents would be pretty happy with. If I brought home a report card with these grades. You can see a little bit more detailed of a breakdown here that shows you the exact number of action items that are either on track, a work in progress, or not on track in each of those 8 subsystems. And the rough draft of the action item progress report that you all received in your packet today. You can see an example on this slide here. Shows you how we're presenting this information, where we take one subsystem at a time, break it down so you can look at each individual objective to see the number of action items within that objective that are on track today. All in all, if we look back at kind of the summary statistics here, you can see that about 90% of all the action items that we hope to get done in these first 5 years are either complete or they're actively a work in progress. So altogether, 90% of the way there looks pretty good. And what we'll be doing next is, first of all, sharing these results of this action item summary. We'll also be putting out an appendix with this action item progress report that has a detailed breakdown that goes into every single individual action item. And we'll be releasing that out to the public this summer, along with the rest of the outreach we're doing for the Greenway Master Plan. And then later this fall, once staff has some more availability, after summer programming wraps up, we're going to work on putting together a revised action plan where we're really going to try to take those 350 action items and streamline them much more so that they're a little bit more user-friendly, something that's relevant to our staff in their everyday work and isn't the kind of thing that just gets put in a plan and sits on a shelf. And so that's something that we'll be working with, again, internally, our staff, and then coming back to you all with that information later this fall as well. That's all I have for you. Like I said, just a brief update there, but more than happy to take any questions that anybody has.
Any questions, y'all?
I'll just offer that was one of the best succinct presentations I've seen from this department, and the graphics and everything were amazing. Professional quality. TJ, but let's get him a new microphone.
Oh, yeah? Man,
yeah.
All right.
Got the tie. Everything is perfect except for the audio, and the audio is so important.
You can just do these. You can just do your earphones.
Yeah. No, it's great job. But no, it's super exciting, and I loved I love the way you're attacking it with data. So thank you so much for sharing.
Any other questions? It is awesome. It's great to see everything on track. All right. Thank you, TJ, for hanging out with us.
Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Marcia, yep. You're muted.
I do have a question. How could we rate so high with arts when the Pullen Arts Center has not been functional for so long? I mean, it's not there at all. So I'm just curious how that scores so high when that facility's offline. And so it leaves us, the city has one arts center.
Right. So
the city, one more thing I would say, the city was supposed to build an arts center at Horseshoe Farm Park, and that hasn't happened. So how do we get an A for arts with those missing pieces?
Yeah, so to be honest, I'd have to go back and look at the individual action items in that arts subsystem to see.
exactly what those were. I'm not, if I believe there was an action item directly related to the Pullen Arts project. And I believe that we categorize that one as a work in progress, since that is that's actively underway. We have the resources allocated, we have the staff allocated. Since that's an ongoing project, even though it hasn't quite gotten across the finish line yet, it still counts as a work in progress, and so that would have not brought that letter grade down for arts.
So, the city promised this that with the master plan at Horseshoe Farm, that there would be an arts center, and that was access to nature and arts were the two things that the community wanted when the master planning process was going on. So that I think that's kind of evaporated. It seems from the distance I have from it that there's no energy for that arts facility to be built. So it's a long way for people that live in that part of the town to get to Pullen or Saratoga Arts Center if they want to participate in learning how to do pottery or want to be in a sketching class or something.
But that didn't come up in the bond at all, did it? Were we talking about that in the bond process at all?
No.
That wasn't even like a long-term project.
It wasn't.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's happened to that the Horseshoe master plan. What's that, where that the citizens expected that to happen and it didn't. And I just wondered, it was surprising to me to see an A, and I'm going, we only have one arts facility that's functioning, one that was promised and never been built, and one that's, taking a long time to be built. So that's all. It seems to be
I understood the A to mean that all the projects that we had planned to do for arts were on track.
That's right. So those specific action items that made it into the system plan in 2014, that's what we're reporting on. So it's not really a general report on kind of arts access throughout the city. I think that's something that we looked at in more depth for the Raleigh Arts Plan, that we'll be doing through the Public Art Master Plan coming up later this year. But this is really specifically about those action items that were in the system plan in 2014.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, I don't believe that Horseshoe Farm was included in those action items. So that would kind of be a separate issue, just how far along we are to implementing that master plan.
Thank you.
Clodagh.
Yeah, and just in connection with that, TJ, could you maybe explain a little more on how the scoring process worked?
Sure. Yep. So let's see if I can bring up a good slide. So what we did is for each of the subsystems, we got together an advisory board of relevant staff who work in each of these program areas. And we brought to them each of the action items that fall within that subsystem. So again, we have about 350 total. So you figure somewhere between 15 and 30 action items. You can actually see the totals here. So between 20 and 60 at the highest total action items in each of those program areas. And we got together with the staff, the subject matter experts who kind of work on this stuff every single day, and went through with them to decide each of these individual action items. Is it on track? Is it either, and again, the handout that you all got kind of breaks down the criteria that we used in more specificity. But essentially, if it was on track, that means it's either completed, like something that we can just check the box, cross it off the list, it's done. Those would be kind of finite, tangible projects that you can do once and say is done. Or they're ongoing, which means that it's kind of like fully operationalized in our everyday work. It's something that's maybe never going to be done necessarily, but something that we've again fully operationalized and incorporated into our day-to-day work. And then work in progress means now we can't say we finished it, we're not done, but it is something that we're actively working on. So you might see a number of the items in Greenway's subsystem, for example, are something that we haven't gotten done that we hope to, but we're actively working on them as part of the Greenway Master Plan. And so we would consider those a work in progress. That applies too to some of the things that fall under the Master Plan. Again, those are individual action items that we're not quite finished with, but we've kind of got all the resources aligned that we need to, and the staff time allocated that we need to get those done. And then those that are not on track, the ones that we've determined may not be a priority anymore, even if they were in 2014, or we just don't have the resources in line, or it otherwise doesn't align with our current departmental or city priorities the way that we thought it did in 2014. And so those that we've marked as not on track are the ones that we're going to revisit in the most detail and kind of decide what we need to do to be able to get those done. Or if we decide that they're not relevant and they're no longer priorities, then eliminate them during the revision process later this year.
Were there a lot of those?
Most of the assessment process was in the I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Claudia?
Sorry, but I think my internet's going funny. Eliminated, like what types of programs you would say they're no longer relevant? Can you hear me?
I think so. One of us is having some connectivity issues. So if I understood you, so far nothing's been eliminated. But again, there would be some things that we would want to revisit, whether they remain priorities. I can think of one off the top of my head is the Lake Wheeler Water Sports Center. That was one action item that was in the 2014 system plan as it was adopted. And we were hoping to make progress on that in the first 10 years. And so right now we're not on track to get that project done in the anticipated timeline. And so that's something that we need to revisit and maybe either adjust that timeline or consider dropping it from our priorities list in the future. But all those considerations are farther down the line. This was really just the initial report on what we've been able to accomplish so far.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions for TJ? All right. Awesome.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for hanging out with us. All right. Board comments. I guess I can go around to who I see. Well, I know Chris is on the call and might be on the call still. So I'll say Chris, since you're not on the video.
No, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I felt really disconnected from parks and the decisions that are being made. You know, I go by the new park by my house. There's, caution tape over the playgrounds. There's plywood on the basketball goals. Kids are ripping all of it down to play. But we're getting back, and I like the mowing. I like that we're getting back to where people can socialize. I think we all need to work together, and if we could communicate a little more from the department to the board members, because when people in my neighborhood come to me and like, why is this park closed? I don't have an answer. So I think if there's any communication, that would be helpful. So thanks, and I appreciate the guidance tonight.
Great. All right, Kendall.
I think I said what I wanted to say. I think earlier. I think that, Chris, I appreciate your passion. I think that I'm going to support anything that we do, but we got to figure out what the elephant in the room is, and we got to call things what it is. Again, I go back to Brad, the work that we did with this bond, right? What happens with that? And a lot of people we put a lot of energy into that. And when you talk about teams, I want to understand this because this is my expertise. All teams don't understand about equity or disenfranchised and marginalized communities. And not only do they don't, their parents don't understand it because some of their parents have put it under the rug because they didn't want to deal with it. So with this pandemic, we're all coming out in different places, even as adults. And so let's keep to make sure that when we talk about like the YMCA, we talk about for all, let's define what all means and let's do right by all people.
Great. Thanks, sir. Lindsay.
I guess I would like to say thanks for the Raleigh Parks team adding our board meetings to the social media to announce that. That's really awesome. So, and I saw there was a tweet today, so that was good. My only other suggestion would be to see if we could integrate that into, I get the Friday newsletters from the Raleigh Parks Rec Department. And so to see a mention of that, some people don't use social media. So to integrate that into newsletters would be another way to engage with the public. So that's my other suggestion from a communications standpoint. But I agree with the suggestions to, look into more opportunities for equity in terms of youth and Black and Brown communities and other identities in the community, exploring those. And some good points have been raised tonight, and I am in favor of a Parks Board family meeting in August. Is a great idea. So that's about it for me.
It seems like you out there snowboarding or snow skiing out there, and the waves are not choppy at all. How about that?
I'm virtually at Lake Wheeler. I saw they were promoted actually in the Raleigh Parks newsletters. They were promoting that you could integrate a virtual background to your.
They've been fighting for 30 years. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all.
All right, David. I'm just going by the blocks on my screen.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really nice to see you all. This is not that I'm not saying this because of what Chris said, but I actually wanted to compliment the department on their communication. Oscar, I think you've sent out some messages that it took a certain level of bravery to accept responsibility around, and like the communication around the camp programs and things like that. I know it's been difficult, and we're all seeing a lot of change in our private businesses, and I just can't imagine working in a public institution right now and trying to adjust things that have been the way they've been for a long time. And then I just want to comment on the equity conversation, because that's been something that's been very important to me ever since I joined the board a long time ago. And I think that conversation has existed on this board long before the most recent events have brought it into the public consciousness. And it's just going to be a consistent topic, right? Because equality of distribution and resources does not mean equity, right? Not in the city, because there's a long history of inequity. And I think we do have to do what we need to raise voices that haven't been heard before, even if it's frustrating or awkward to have the conversation about that. So I applaud those that are willing to bring it up. And I think Kendall did a good job tonight with that. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Dave.
Thanks. No comment.
Okay. Lex, I think that's Lex.
Yeah, no,
Seen you out of a suit.
really, just wishing everybody well and hope you all stay safe.
Marsha.
I'm going to compliment Oscar too on that, on the communication about Horseshoe Farm Park. That was, I just had a big smile about the way you responded to that. And thank you. There was a wildlife habitat advisory task force that created a document in the early 2000s about how we preserve our nature parks. And I don't know if the current staff is using that document. Perhaps that might be something that that the board would want to look at and see if we felt like it needed to be updated, or the staff could. I'd be interested to know if it's still usable, if it's still serving the department. So that's just something I, wanted to put on the table. And Kendall, I really appreciate your tenacity, and you keep bringing us back to what we should do. I just appreciate it very much. Thank you.
I love you more. How about that?
Thank you all.
Thanks, Marcia. Quota?
Well, I just want to say it's really good to see everybody. And it's been a very strange few months, I know. But it's good to see we're getting back on track and returning to more of a normal life. And I think we are in a changed world. And I think, I second Marcia. Kendall, keep at it. And we'll be behind you. I know I will. And I'm pretty sure the rest of this board will as well. So, it's great to see everybody. Look forward to our family get-together.
Great. Jennifer?
I echo Quota. It's good seeing everybody. Have a great night. I'm hungry. Talk soon. Bye.
Carol?
First of all, a hearty hi to everybody. I just feel like hugging everybody. I'm so glad to see other human beings, even if it's this way. And I think it's a magnificent board. Everybody has something strong to contribute. Staff is excellent. Oscar, your response about the mowing at Horseshoe Farm Park took a lot of guts and showed true courage and managerial ability. And I join Marcia. I really appreciate that. I continue to fret over the greenways and wonder if supplemental funding could help, and where we could find it and how we could find it, and would it impose a greater burden on staff or lesser burden on staff, or would it be helpful or not? And so I'm in a position of listening to see what staff can tell me about, am I treading on sensitive territory to even offer to help find funding, or is it because I'm ignorant and I don't know what's going on, or what? But I'm very receptive and humble, and will be glad to hear anything I can hear about whether or not we need funding, additional supplemental funding to the city funding that we have. I know we get supplemental already, but do we have enough? Do we need more? Do we need more sponsors? And just take care, everybody.
Thanks, Carol. Charlie?
Just want to say it's great seeing everybody. I hope you've all been healthy and safe. And as always, just a big shout out to city staff for all the hard work that you do every day that goes unappreciated.
Thank you, Charlie.
Beverly? You're muted, but yeah. Then Dr. Love's up next.
ditto to all that's been said from the whole spectrum of things. And I want to give a shout out to Michael, who's not even in the Parks and Rec department, who's been hosting this meeting and made sure it all worked smoothly. And other than that, I'm going to agree with Jennifer and quote one of my nephews a long time ago when he was a little guy. It said, "Amen, dig in." Ready to go.
Fantastic. Dr. Lowe, I promised you 77 minutes. It looks like we're going to be a bit over that. So I apologize for that, but you can take us home.
Virtual hug to all of you. It's good to see everybody. And look forward to working with you one of the days. Sports and I think I'm going to have a glass of wine now.
All right, y'all.
Walk my dog.
Hold on, hey, Dr. Love. Dr. Love, you retired. You didn't work on your internet, all that money you got. Your internet ain't even working right.
I'm good.
Well, all right, y'all. I hope you have a good night. Enjoy your glasses of wine. I think I need one too now. And I appreciate all your time. We'll see you next month for our family meeting. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night. Thank you, all of you.
Good night for now.
Bye.
He looks a hot mess, he said.